The hours of Monday, the Army's TV station said power had been handed over to Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing, while Suu Kyi and other members of her party were arrested. Military roadblocks were set up and phone and internet services interrupted. But it's difficult to hide everything in this age of social media, and one regional lawmaker's arrest was live-streamed by her husband on Facebook. No. Some supporters coming out in caravans, waving military flags shortly after the coup. American freelance journalist Andrew Nackimson woke up to the news in Yangon, Myanmar's largest city.
I woke up to a few missed phone calls and quite a few text messages at around maybe 5:30. Obviously, pretty quickly figured out what was going on. Relatively soon after that, my cell phone data and my internet cut out. My home Wi-Fi cut out, so I left my house trying to walk around to find somewhere where I could get internet. And I was seeing crowds of people at street markets stocking up on food, buying rice and eggs and vegetables. There were lines of people waiting outside banks for them to open, outside grocery stores, pharmacies, waiting for these things to open so that they could stock up on supplies. So there was definitely a lot of fear.
In a letter attributed to Suu Kyi and posted on her party's Facebook page, she called on her supporters to protest against the coup, which may well happen given her party's landslide win in the November elections, which the military has repeatedly claimed were fraudulent. Their ally, the USDP, lost heavily against Suu Kyi's National League of Democracy, or NLD, and the coup comes just before the new parliament was due to meet this week. Nackimson says this disinformation campaign began well before people went to the polls.
And for a while, the military didn't get involved, just kind of let the USDP make these allegations. And then suddenly they jumped into the kind of conspiracy disinformation campaign quite aggressively. It became clear the closer that Parliament got to meeting that things were getting increasingly tense.
President Biden releasing this statement today. The United States is taking note of those who stand with the people of Burma in this difficult hour. We'll work with our partners throughout the region and the world to support the restoration of democracy and the rule of law, as well as to hold accountable those responsible for overturning Burma's democratic transition. Suu Kyi's international reputation as a beacon of democracy has been badly damaged by her repeated failure to condemn atrocities carried out by the Myanmar military against the Rohingya, a Muslim minority fleeing persecution in neighbouring Bangladesh. But experts fear, without anyone to keep them in check, the military could well step up its campaign against them, as well as any number of perceived enemies, both political and religious.
Thousands of protesters spilled into the streets of Myanmar's largest city on Saturday, chanting "Down with the military dictatorship" and holding up three-finger salutes, signs that critics of last Monday's coup are growing bolder. As the demonstration swelled, authorities restricted internet access and broadened a ban on social media. This follows a week of other peaceful displays of defiance, with residents banging on pots and pans night after night, and some doctors and teachers refusing to work. This woman says, "We don't want anyone who steals power and then forms their own government." Since seizing power last Monday, Myanmar's military has declared it would stay in power for at least a year. The commander-in-chief alleges November's parliamentary elections were fraudulent, a claim dismissed by the country's election commission. The governing party of Aung San Suu Kyi won in a landslide. Now she's under house arrest, as she had been for 15 years, struggling against previous military rule before a troubled democratic transition began in 2011. Suu Kyi had turned into a symbol of peaceful resistance. But critics say after she became the nation's top civilian leader in 2015, she failed to address the army's deadly crackdown on Myanmar's minority Rohingya Muslims. Entire villages were destroyed, and hundreds of thousands fled to neighboring Bangladesh. The UN called it ethnic cleansing. Still widely adored at home, Suu Kyi now faces a possible prison term over the charge of illegally importing walkie-talkies. As restrictions on the internet grow, so too do concerns that the country and its people will once again live in isolation.
The Myanmar military shut down the internet in the country on Saturday as thousands of people protested in Myanmar's largest city, Yangon. It was the biggest street demonstration seen yet since this week's coup. As the protests swelled, witnesses reported a shutdown of mobile data services and Wi-Fi. Earlier, the military ordered mobile operators and internet providers to block access to Twitter and Instagram. A temporary ban had already been put on Facebook, which counts half of the country's 54 million population as users. Before the shutdown, #SaveMyanmar and #RespectOurVotes were trending, and many were using the platform to voice their opposition to the military coup. The Ministry of Communications and Information did not immediately answer a request for comment, but said previously it had blocked Facebook for the sake of, quote, stability. A Facebook spokesman confirmed the block on Instagram to Reuters. A spokeswoman for Twitter said, quote, "We will continue to advocate to end destructive government-led shutdowns." Norwegian telecom Telenor, one of the largest in Myanmar, also expressed its concern in a statement and said it had challenged the necessity of the order to authorities. For the fourth consecutive night, Yangon residents banged pots and pans to show resistance against the military takeover and to drive out evil spirits. There were signs of coup opponents growing bolder on Friday. Staff from various government ministries put on red ribbons in the capital, Naypyidaw, and some teachers at a university in Yangon refused to work and held a three-finger salute as a symbol of resistance.
A tense standoff between protesters and police in Yangon, Myanmar's largest city, Saturday. The group of around 1,000 chanting slogans of defiance while giving the three-fingered salute popularized by the Hunger Games movies. The military was ready, stopping demonstrators on the street and then cutting cell phone lines and internet access, with near total blackouts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. With no means to communicate, protesters dispersed peacefully. The unrest began Monday when pre-dawn headlights of military vehicles lit up the road to Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw. With no shots fired, they rounded up and arrested the country's civilian leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, and an unknown number of elected leaders and members of Myanmar's pro-democracy party. At issue, the military claimed massive election fraud in last November's parliamentary polls after Suu Kyi's party won a landslide. The Election Commission says fraud did not happen. The now 75-year-old democracy icon spent 15 years under house arrest, peacefully protesting against the junta. In 1991, she won her Nobel Prize, but critics say she failed to address the potential genocide of the Muslim minority Rohingya. In 2017, hundreds of homes were burned. The UN called it ethnic cleansing, and nearly 1 million have fled to neighboring Bangladesh. Now detained, the Nobel laureate is calling on the people to protest against a return to authoritarian rule.